Okay, the Kyle Tucker situation is absolutely exploding right now, and I need to talk about what just happened this weekend. Because things are moving fast. Tucker met with the Dodgers, he met with the Mets, and suddenly we've got a completely different free agent landscape than we had just a few days ago. For weeks, it felt like Toronto was the only team really in this thing. But now we've got legitimate competition, and I think that's actually going to force a decision sooner rather than later. Let me be honest with you. Some people are panicking right now, seeing these Dodgers and Mets reports come out, but I'm looking at this from a completely different angle. We were stuck in purgatory with Tucker for what felt like forever. Toronto had met with him down at the Florida complex before the holidays, and then nothing. Radio silence for weeks. We kept waiting for another shoe to drop, and it finally did. These meetings with LA and New York mean his market is actually moving now, instead of just sitting there frozen while everyone waits for someone else to make the first move. Here's the thing, though. When you've got multiple teams involved like this, someone's getting used as leverage. And that's just how this works. For years, Toronto has been that team. We've been the ones getting played to drive up someone else's price. And honestly, it's exhausting. But right now, I genuinely think the Dodgers and Mets might be the leverage plays here, not Toronto. And that's a massive shift from how things usually go for us. The latest reporting from guys like John Heyman and Jim Duquette is that the Mets are very much in this thing, and they're starting to talk about a 5-year deal for Tucker. Now, we don't know exactly how long Toronto is willing to go because all we've heard is that they're the team willing to offer the longest term compared to everyone else, but what does that actually mean? If the Dodgers are only talking about a 2 or 3 year deal, then technically Toronto offering 4 or 5 years would be longer. We just don't have the specifics yet, and that's driving everyone crazy. What we do know is that each team seems to have their own competitive advantage here. The Dodgers can offer you a chance to play with Shohei Ohtani and go for championships on massive stages with deferred money structures that might make the annual value look insane. The Mets have Steve Cohen's wallet and can probably outbid anyone on pure dollars if they really want to. And Toronto can offer long-term stability with a competitive roster that just made some serious moves this offseason. Plus, the fact that Tucker has played with some of these guys before. So it all comes down to what Kyle Tucker actually values most. Does he want the biggest total guarantee over the longest period of time? Does he want the highest average annual value, even if it means a shorter deal and hitting free agency again in a few years? Does he want to play for a specific organization or in a specific market? We honestly don't know, and until we hear directly from his camp about what matters most to him, we're all just guessing. But here's why I still feel really good about Toronto's chances, despite these other teams getting involved. If I'm Kyle Tucker and I'm looking at my recent injury history, I'm not sure I want to bet on myself with a short-term deal. He missed significant time a couple years ago. He had that shin injury last year that affected his defense and base running. Those are two of his biggest strengths as a player, the elite defense and the speed. If he signs a 2 or 3 year deal and something happens to his legs or his defensive ability drops off, he's not getting anywhere close to this kind of money when he hits the market again. The safe play is to take the longest guaranteed deal with the most total money, and Toronto appears to be the team willing to offer that. The other thing working in Toronto's favor here is the money coming off their books after this season. George Springer's contract is up, Kevin Gausman's deal ends, Dalton Varsho becomes a free agent. You've got a bunch of salary flexibility opening up right when you be paying Tucker. So this is even a situation where they're completely handcuffing themselves financially. If Ross Atkins follows his usual pattern of liking long-term stability at premium positions, which we've seen him do with Springer and others, then Tucker makes perfect sense as that next cornerstone outfielder for the next decade. The Mets are in a weird spot right now where they just let Pete Alonso walk. Their pitching staff isn't complete, and there's been some noise about tension between ownership and the front office. That doesn't scream stability to me. The Dodgers are obviously the Dodgers, and they're always going to be attractive to free agents. But if they're not willing to go long-term and Tucker wants security, that takes him out of the running pretty quickly. I think what's going to happen here over the next week or two is we're going to see more reports about how well meetings are going with New York and LA, how serious they are, how the money is getting closer to what Tucker wants. And I think a lot of that is going to be positioning and leverage building. But at the end of the day, if Toronto is willing to go 7, 8, maybe even 9 years at a high annual value, I don't see how they don't end up with the best offer on the table for a player who probably should prioritize long-term security over short-term max dollars. The one thing that would really worry me is if we start hearing from Jeff Passan or one of the other top insiders that a deal is close with another team. But until we get that kind of report, I'm staying optimistic that Toronto is still in the driver's seat here. They're going to have to pay up more than they probably hoped when this whole thing started. But if they're serious about competing and extending their window, Kyle Tucker is exactly the type of player you spend big money on. He's 29 years old. He's an elite hitter who can play multiple outfield positions. He has speed, and he fits perfectly into the middle of this lineup. We've seen Toronto be aggressive this offseason in ways they haven't been in years past. They're over the luxury tax. They've made multiple big signings, and they're clearly not messing around anymore. Landing Tucker would be the perfect cap to that and would give them arguably one of the best lineups in baseball. Even if they don't get him, this is still a really good team that's built to compete, but obviously adding Tucker makes everything better. So that's where I'm at right now. More reports are going to come out. Things are going to get crazier before this gets resolved. But I still believe Toronto has the best chance to land him if they're willing to do what it takes to get the deal done.